Hi, y'all. It's Bridget Cutshaw with Real Things Living. Today, my guest is Bob Gonzalez. He is the author called of a book called A Flicker in the Water. And he has found that being in nature, he just loves it and is very healing. Can you say hi, Bob?
Hello, Brigitte. How are you? Hi, everybody out there.
And I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the podcast because number one, I love nature like you because it is very healing and I love being out for some reason, just in general, being around water, just trees, everything. And can you explain a little bit? I know you live in Florida now, but you grew up in the Pennsylvania area, right? So what
Yeah,
yeah.
I grew up in northeastern Pennsylvania among the mountains and a lot of white-tailed deer.
A lot of hunting, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure it's just I think that's really cool when you have that kind of environment. It helps change your mindset and perspective of how to deal with issues in life. And so what made you get into fishing after doing whitetail deer hunting?
Well, it was something I always enjoyed as a kid. We used to go to the summers to New Jersey and fish in New Jersey. We would catch a lot of bluefish and albacore and things like that. We would do some freshwater and even some ice fishing we did like in Pennsylvania and upstate New York. Not a lot, not like when I got to Florida, but we did some. So the bug was always there. And once I moved down to Florida in my 20s, I started fishing all the time and I loved it. And after 15 or 20 years of stories of being out there, I thought people would enjoy reading about them, so I put them into the book.
That's really cool. And as you're talking, deep sea fishing is a lot different than fishing on a lake. And you've probably it's kind of can be really rough out there unexpectedly, right? You had to learn. I'm sure you learned that quickly.
Oh yeah, it's not for the faint of heart, that's for sure. It can get rough and quick. Sometimes when you least expect it too. There's a few stories in the book about rough seas that readers will really enjoy.
So, a flicker in the water. So, what made you come up with that title? I'm just curious.
That title was inspired by a battle we were having with a big tuna. It was the middle of the night. The reflection from the lights of the oil rigs. There's a lot of oil rigs off the coast of Louisiana, and that's where we were fishing. And there were tunas all over the place. And it was around 2 a.m. when this big one struck. And as we were working with it coming in, the water would shimmer in the water. I just said a flicker in the water, and that's how that came about.
That's cool. That's very creative. At least you noticed
Mm.
that and you remembered that, right?
Yeah.
It's it is so you're fishing, is it just a I'm just curious. I haven't read your book yet, but is it a
Mhm.
hobby or is it just something you do for a living? I'm just curious.
Well, and it wasn't for a living, but it was a way of life for a while.
I got you.
Yeah, we did. We would catch enough fish though to be able to take some to the fish markets, and they would distribute them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
my
they
husband
distribute to.
I was gonna say my husband's gone on some fishing trips with some friends up here in that area or by Panama City kind of area, Dessa,
Mhm, mhm.
and it they've had some good rough experiences and some simple easy experiences. But you're right, there's a lot of fish and they've have to that's why they have groups, I guess, because you can split the uh the type of fish you get. But it's a really good thing to connect if I'm with other people too while you're out there. I'm assuming you do you have your own boat? I'm assuming to do this.
Well, the stories in the book were when I had my own boat. Yeah, it's all the boat called the Twister. It's about the adventures of our. The boat was called the Twister.
I love that. People don't know maybe if they're on boats, you usually give your own name. You name your boat, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
why did you call it Twister? I'm just
Well, the small business that I had was called Pretzel Twister, so we named it for Twister.
I I love your sense of humor because that is funny. And I'm sure that gets people's attention. You see the word Twister on the back of the
Yeah,
and
um,
it how big was your boat? I'm just curious how long it was because I've just
43 feet.
that's pretty big. And
Yeah.
you need something like that on the ocean anyway. You can't
Yeah,
let
you don't want to go out there in something too small because it can get rough out there. But when
unexpectedly,
it's calm, I don't want people to get the wrong idea. When it's calm, it's paradise. There's nothing like it.
right? It's that's so cool. So I wanted to also find out or ask you, you said some people wanted to find out what you learned from all this stuff. What are some of the life lessons? What are the
Well, some of
major,
the
yeah,
one of the reviewers, he said apart from being entertaining, the stories were very educational. He really enjoyed sharing some of these life lessons with his children, which I was really moved when I read that. That was nice of him to say. I think some of the life lessons are just persistence. A lot of times when you're fishing, things aren't going to go your way all the time. It's a lot more than just throwing your line in the water and all of a sudden a fish will bite. It's sometimes you have to work really hard for that bite to happen, and sometimes it doesn't happen at all. But I try to say if you persist enough and fight through that frustration, you'll usually come out with something on the other end eventually. And I think that holds true for life too. If you persist through the pain of a lot of things that you're dealing with, instead of giving up or packing it in, I think you can be successful. But you have to persist through the pain. So that's for ocean people and land people.
that's true. And it kind of what you're made me think of probably helps you learn about patience. You got to be,
Yeah,
everything
patience. Yeah,
doesn't happen quickly
yeah,
or ever
yeah,
happen.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's that lesson. There's the lesson of. I think there's a lot of natural lessons. I think you're more connected to nature and to the creator when you're out on the ocean because it's just you and the sky and the water, and that's pretty much it. And
It's calming. It sounds very
yeah,
calming to me.
it's very calming. Yeah, very calming. I think you get a deep sense of your soul within when you're out on the water. It has a calming effect on people for sure.
Oh, I like that. You're connected
Mm.
with your soul. You find more about yourself, right?
Yeah, definitely soul searching. Yeah, and you can find it out there.
That's so cool. So what did you
Yeah.
find on your, I'm just curious if that's something that you could share. What did you find about that you didn't
Well,
realize?
you find calm and you find inner peace a lot of times that you don't get on land because you realize that the world is vast and you're the hustles and bustles of everyday life go away when you're out on the water. You realize things are a lot bigger than you think they might be.
That's right. And you're right. When you're on land, I feel like we're like rushing on it. We are
Yeah.
running around trying to get, I mean, it's important, but to get stuff done. But at the same time, you've got to make time like you're doing
Hmm.
to get out there. And
Hmm.
your takeaway is to get, you've got to make time for that. Just be
Hmm.
calm. And it helps you deal, sounds like reduce stress probably as well,
Hmm.
even though you're building persistence, right? But you're also, I think, reducing stress. And that's why I don't fish, but I do like to sit out and stare at trees. I do like
Yeah.
to, we live near a lake and I love to watch the sunset when I
Hmm.
can. We made time for that. I find that,
Hmm.
wow, there's another day, right? And then another beauty. That's how you have to look at things, right? And I'm
Hmm.
sure when you're out and fishing, though, is it usually overnight? Or I just, like I said, I'm not a fisherman or fisher person.
We would have some overnight trips. Yeah, I talk about those. Most of the time, it would be 1 day trip. We'd come in, but a lot of times we would do overnight trips, and usually those overnight trips they produced a lot of fish. We would
Oh,
have
yeah.
some really, yeah, we should have some really good catches on those. We'd go out, anywhere from 60 to 100 miles offshore and get in
Wow.
some really deep water. Yeah, those deep waters hold a lot of wahoos and mahi mahis and blue marlin and swordfish, even things like that. So yeah,
You're
here in
making me
Destin, the
hungry.
water gets,
Sorry, you're making me hungry.
yeah.
I love
Well,
fish.
wahoo is the best. Is my favorite. They're all those that I mentioned are really good eating, but I think wahoo is the best.
I would think, did you, when you catch a lot of fish, you go get it like, vacuum packed, is that the right word? And is that what you do to save them when you take them? I was just curious how if
Yeah,
you,
I think vacuum pack some of them. What I normally do is I put them in like a Ziploc sandwich bag, and you fill it with water, and then put your fillet in, and it keeps it. You don't get any freezer burn or anything like
That's
that.
the
It
point.
comes out nice and fresh. Yeah,
That's really cool. So,
yeah.
do you have kids? I didn't know if you had any children or,
No, I don't.
oh, lucky you. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But I think just where you're explaining, have you thought, or maybe, like I said, haven't read the book, have you taught younger people, like kids, to fish? I was just curious. That's a
I
good lesson.
have. We used to take kids on the boat once in a while. I have a niece and a nephew. When we were fishing, they were really young, so I taught them to fish. I'm working on getting my book into the Destin High School, which has the only accredited fishing class in the U.S. They teach fishing for their curriculum here in the high school.
Wow. I think we should do more of
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. I really do on just in general, like fishing and how to help take care of yourself. That's just is survival. Is that I shouldn't say
Hmm.
survival, but we don't talk about cooking. We don't talk about fishing anymore, and it's important
Yeah.
to learn, and to teach these kids the importance of nature, like you mentioned previously. I've always found I think I like nature because my dad took us out in the woods a lot. He was a hunter, like you meant, but
Yeah.
I didn't want to do that. But I was always out with him hiking and stuff like that. And he did take me fishing, but that was more my brother's thing, not mine. Every person's a little different. So you also another takeaway, a lesson I think you had mentioned was related to persistence is resilience. Because I think
Hmm.
resilience is not something that you're born with. Resilience is something that you learn after getting knocked down, right? It builds your strength.
Hmm. Yeah. When you're fishing, it's a one-on-one battle with a fish a lot of times, and it's uh, it's either win or lose. There's no in between. You either catch him or he gets away.
So if
Sometimes
some yeah, if something is that big and you can't catch them, how do you have to cut the line? Or I'm just curious.
we have cut the line at times. We caught a bull shark one time that we thought might have been a tuna. We fought it for 2 hours and in the hot sun in the middle of the summer, and we thought it was a tuna, but it happened to be a bull shark. So we let him go. We didn't bring him on board. That would have been a real big bull shark too.
Like, I'm just laughing because I would be so scared. Sorry. I
Yeah.
love nature, but I'm scared of sharks, I think, because I watched Jaws came out when I was younger.
Mhm.
It's just kind of
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that wasn't a normal shark situation, but that's kind of I don't know, that's still cool. I think just enjoying nature and being respectful too, even though you're out there fishing to catch food, um, and also for calming. But it is a good way to connect with the other. You just see how the world works, right? And the ocean
Yeah.
is the biggest part of our planet.
Hmm. I try to stress that in the book too. I talk about what the oceans have meant through history, and the fish. In Christianity, fish and fishing is very important. If you look at the Bible, there's stories of fish and fishing all over the place. I do mention the story of in the Sea of Galilee, which I wrote in the book, and I did not know was actually a freshwater lake. It's not a saltwater sea. It's a freshwater lake. It's landlocked in northern Israel, and I never knew that. And I do talk about the time Peter, one of the disciples, went fishing, and they fished all night and caught nothing. So they're back to shore. They had already loaded their gear up, and they were disappointed and tired. And Jesus was standing there at the shore, and he told them to go back out in the water and lower your nets in the deep water. And he didn't want to do it. Peter said, "We fished all night and caught nothing, but if you say so, I'll do it." So they went out there, lowered their nets in the deep water, and those nets were so full of fish that they couldn't even put them all in the boat.
Wow, that's a great
Yeah,
story to share that is connected to what you're like you're saying in
yeah,
the Bible and your
yeah,
personal
yeah,
experience.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
And I think fishing is to me it's easier to do than try to kill an animal on I should say easier. It's hard, but easier than try to kill an animal on land to eat back when the Bible was written. And
Hmm.
that was some great advice that that you had said that Jesus said go back out there and lower that net. And
Yeah.
how can you take that lesson and apply it to life outside of fishing? I'm just the lower the net thing. I'm just curious.
Well, I was trying to stress the importance of what fishing means to mankind, because most of the disciples were fishermen. That's what they
Right.
did for a living. Yeah. So what I'm just trying to stress that, fishing, the oceans, the water, it's all part of our natural, humans' nature. And we connect to it when we're out on the water. At least I do.
But that's important, right? You connected to something that it
Mm.
means a lot to you. And it's your persona in a way, it sounds like, Bob.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
So so when you go fishing now, I'm assuming it's not every day anymore,
Mhm.
or how often do you go fishing?
Well, I have a trip scheduled on September 16th, and I'll let you know how that one goes. They extended the snapper season here, so we were able to catch more snappers than we were just a month or two ago. They extended the limits and the time period.
Wow.
So, see that's over my shoulder, this shoulder, over my
Yeah.
shoulder here. That's a red snapper that we caught. That was 3 pounds shy of the state record.
Wow. That's so cool.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. How much does
yeah.
it weigh, or did it weigh? Much did it
This one
weigh?
was 42 pounds. The state record is 45.
Holy cow. That is,
Yeah.
I'm sure that was to me, it sounds really hard. That was definitely a struggle, and you were resilient and you were persistent and got the fish um, reeled in. That's
Yeah, the way you catch snappers is you drop your line all the way to the bottom. It's usually, between 100 and 300 feet of water. And yeah, you drop it all the way to the bottom. And as soon as that snapper or that grouper bites, you just start cranking like crazy, because you wanna pulling up in your direction. If you let him turn his head and start going down, they'll get into the holes down there and stuff, and you lose them. You can't pull them back out. So yeah, we had this snapper bit, and we started going like crazy, and we brought him all the way up, and he came up, and it was like a big whoosh. It was like a beach ball, because they get inflated because their bladder fills up with air.
Oh,
So
I did not
yeah,
know that. I'm learning
yeah,
so much about that. That is so cool.
yeah,
Snapper is something I think I've eaten, and it's a good fish to eat.
very good. Yeah, snapper and groupers are really good eating.
I
Yeah,
know. Like I said, I'm like, we're going to eat fish tonight because you were talking about fish. And it is Friday that we're recording this, by the way. I love to eat. I don't know why. I think I was raised that way to eat fish on Friday. I'm sure you maybe you were too. I don't know.
yeah, yeah. I know Catholics don't do that, right? The Catholics, I don't think, eat fish on Friday. Is that right?
They do. Actually, they
They
do.
do. Okay,
Mhm.
yeah.
And that's kind of what I think. I was raised Catholic, by the way, because my mother is from Europe, from France, and so that's kind of where it came
Mm-hmm.
from. And my dad, it was an American soldier and brought her back.
Mm-hmm.
And they we just learned a lot. I'm just so glad I was raised around being in nature, the importance of it.
Yeah,
And I think I learned about the fish stuff from my brother a lot.
yeah,
He
yeah.
was really into it. And then my
Mm-hmm.
younger son, well, he's an adult now, but he's really big into fishing. And I think it's like you,
Oh
he
yeah.
likes to
Oh.
just go, he goes on the lake and
Mm-hmm.
on a John boat. Is
Yeah.
the word. And it's not a big boat, guys. It's not a canoe either. It's in between.
Yeah.
And but he goes with at least sometimes with one friend, and he finds it relaxing. He likes
Mm-hmm.
that's part of it, and that's
Mm-hmm.
it. Kind of helps like you too after working, or if you're still working. It's just a good way to relax too.
Yeah. Yeah. My grandfather came from Europe too, and he was Catholic also, so we learned a lot of those same things together.
Yes,
Yeah.
we did, and right, and that's kind of what. So
Yeah.
it's okay, and then I like fish in general. I crave it more than like I'm not a fan of beef, sorry. But
Mm-hmm.
I do for some reason love fish. And maybe because it was I was raised around. And we just went on vacation to see my mom's family in France, and we ate a lot of fish there. It was
Really? Oh, good. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
because you're close to the my uncle has a house near the Normandy, well, I should say Normandy, the Brittany region where Normandy is there, just by the English Channel. There's a lot
Hmm.
of seafood there. So
Yeah.
of course you're going to take advantage of that and eat the
Mhm.
seafood.
Yeah. Yeah.
that you can't
You know
eat.
what I also learned writing the book, and I didn't know this either. The Mediterranean Sea, there's only one way in and out of there, between Spain and Morocco, I think it is. And the channel
Yes,
is only, yeah, is only 11 miles wide. That's it. 11 miles in that big body of water. It's like the Gulf of Mexico is only about a third of the size of the Mediterranean
I did
Sea.
not know that.
I
Wow.
didn't either. I learned this stuff when I was, researching for the book, and yeah, it was only 11 miles wide to get in and out of there. And I'm thinking, how can the fit? Because it's good for fishing in the Mediterranean. And I'm thinking, how can they get in and out of there just 11 miles? But yeah,
I'm
I guess they
sure
do.
probably limit, they probably limit, how many boats can come in. I'm assuming,
Yeah,
and or
yeah,
they probably have docks
yeah,
along the
mm,
coast there. And I know Spain is also part of that. There's part of France that's down there too, is my understanding, right? I think. And then
hmm,
I've never been there, but I know people who have gone on like cruises. But
hmm,
I think maybe they have to limit that kind of stuff because I didn't know. I
hmm.
just learned something from you. 11 miles. I did not know
Yeah,
the difference.
yeah,
Have you ever
yeah.
thought about going fishing and other like something like that? I was just curious.
Oh, I would love to do that. Yeah, definitely. Give me a place, I'll go. Yeah, the Mediterranean, Costa Rica, the Pacific Islands are really good. Australia is really good. All those
I've heard,
places, yeah.
yeah, stuff off of Costa Rica is really popular.
Yeah.
And the only other Caribbean island I've ever been to is, well, I shouldn't call it Caribbean, the British Virgin Islands, I think,
Okay.
in Puerto Rico,
Yeah.
because my mother-in-law sailed for a while. And so
Mhm.
we met her there. It was easier to go to British Virgin Islands to get in with a passport than the others. We were traveling with our kids, but that's the only place I've been to. And in Puerto Rico, um, that was really pure. The ocean in general is just gorgeous, like you said, and the
Mhm.
islands. And
Yeah.
I have not fished out there though, but I think my son wants to one day, right? So just like you, Bob, to go deep sea fishing.
My mother's from Puerto Rico. We fished there
Oh,
a couple times, and also fished in the Bahamas. And
ah,
yeah, there's a few stories of that in the book. San Salvador, which is one of the out islands in the Bahamas, is actually the island that Christopher Columbus first discovered on his voyage. And
yes.
yeah, it's very deep water around San Salvador, and the water is crystal clear. I've never seen such clear water anywhere. And yeah, I talk about a couple of the adventures we had there. People will enjoy.
So there's no blue tint or anything. It's just clear water, right? Is that what
Oh,
you're saying?
it's clear, but there's blue, there's purple, there's green, there's everything. It's like the color combination is like amazing.
Wow.
It's totally. You could be looking down into the water, and it could be 200 feet deep, but it only looks like it's a foot or two deep. That's how
I,
clear it
I
is.
was I was about to ask you how what the depth was. Depth, excuse me, can't even talk today. That sounds exciting, and I'm so glad that you are embracing your um exploratory nature. I think that you're being you, and I think that's really cool that you're doing that. So
Mm.
what other than one more question for you, other than persistence and resilience, what other life lesson do you think someone can take away from your book and what you've learned from your fishing and boating? One more.
Um,
Curious.
well, the fun is in the battle. You know, sometimes they'll go your way, sometimes they won't. You do everything you can to make it go your way, but there's some things that are just out of your control. You you tie the lines the way you want them to be. You do it. You get everything ready, but sometimes the fish or circumstances in life have a say in how things turn out. But you do the things you can control. And
That's
then
true. Yeah.
yeah,
I like how you said use the word fun because that is I think is important to you're going to be consistent with something because deep down you're having fun.
yeah,
It's making you.
yeah, yeah. Love conquers all.
Yes, I love that. Yeah, I love that. It is. It truly does. You have a great perspective, Bob. So where can people learn more about you and where to get your book?
Well, the book's available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble online. The best place, though, to look, and it's got links to all these places, is my website, flickerinthewater.com, with no A. It's just flickerinthewater.com. You could find some interesting things there about the oceans and about fish and stuff that's not in the book even sometimes on the site. And it's clicked to all the links are on there if you want to go to Amazon or Barnes and Noble. Flickerinthewater.com. And here I'll show you. Here's what the cover looks like.
Oh, it's big, huge. What kind of fish is that on the cover?
That's a Goliath grouper.
Goliath, definitely.
Goliath grouper.
Goliath.
Yeah, that's the biggest grouper in the grouper family.
Wow, that is so cool. And I definitely recommend, you get this, I think, as a gift for people, especially younger people, so they can learn. I think
Mm-hmm.
they can learn from, what you've gone through and stories. And I love nature and exploring is so cool. For those that are listening, I'll have include the link that Bob mentioned in the description. And I really appreciate this opportunity. And I love your personality and your excitement for life. That's how I'm getting from you. You have an excitement for life, and I love that.
Well, thank you, Bridget. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
And from thanks everybody for listening.